Since 2015, Jared Stillman has rocked Nashville sports.
That team freaking stinks.
And now he's back. The takes are hotter than ever.
I mean, let's be honest, he just can't coach.
Welcome to Stillman and Company.
Stillman and Company right here, 440 Sports. Of course, you know the YouTube channel. Like and subscribe. That's right. We want to be kind of your main home as far as the YouTube channel is concerned and everything else. At Stillman and Co. Boy, we had a lot of subscribers yesterday for Postgame Live. People wanted to get in, and we appreciated it yesterday. I appreciate it. Again, 440 Sports across all digital platforms and on YouTube, where we're still working with Apple Podcasts. We'll get it figured out. Spotify, Amazon, everybody else has it. Download the podcast. Tell your friends, so on and so forth. I don't know how many times to say it. Like and subscribe. Subscribe. So, Titans Monday has returned. If you were familiar with the previous Stillman and Company program, I decided, you know what, we're just going to call the thing Titans Monday. Because in a 4-hour radio show, I had no interest on a Monday if the Titans had played and talking about anything else. Because my theory was, if we had talked about the Titans at 2:15, somebody that was getting in their car at 4:45 wasn't in their car at 2:15. So it was going to be wall-to-wall Titans for 4 hours. This is going to be an hour and a half, however long I've got to go to discuss not only yesterday's game, but the fallout from yesterday's game, a game in which the Titans probably should have won, a game in which the Titans defense and special teams created 4 turnovers, a game in which Bo Nix, quarterbacking the Broncos, looked like absolute horseshit, and yet they still lost. They scored 12 points. That was it. And we all know why they lost. And we all know why they only scored 12 points. And I don't know what everybody else's discussion has been today following the disastrous performance by the Titans head coach on Sunday. But I don't think there needs to be much more of a discussion. I think the decision desk can call it. Brian Callahan can't coach. Period. He cannot be a head coach in the National Football League. And I have always said this about the end of narrative season and the beginning of the real season. When the football games actually start, during the offseason, or what Caroline Fenton has dubbed it'll be fine season. Oh, it'll be fine, Jared. We don't have a right tackle, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine. During the offseason, there is no winning or losing. So as fans, you can convince yourself that your coach isn't a total boob, or that last year was all Will Levis's or Rand Carthon's fault, that the Pee Wee program, Brian Callahan, these guys are going to hold hands and sing Kumbaya and everything else. These guys are going to come together, which again was just a big reaction to last year's horrible season, that all that stuff's going to work. But once we play the games, it'll be fine season is over. There is a scoreboard, and the benefit of the doubt goes away completely. So what I noticed that this fan base noticed last night, and I have been trying to tell you for a while, is that Brian Callahan can't coach in the National Football League. That was something I realized this offseason. When he brought up the Pee Wee program on the first day of OTAs, we're going to separate the team into 8 separate yet equally important groups, and they will compete for these fictitious points for prizes that, again, I don't even know what they are, but what does a parking spot matter when you're making $8 million a year? It doesn't. When I heard that, and I heard Tony Pollard get up at the podium and say, yeah, I don't even know what we're competing for, but yeah, this will be fun. I thought, oh, holy shit. This guy does not know what he's doing. Because it was so stupid at the time. And I went off on how stupid it was. And people said, oh, Jared. Yeah, I think more than half the people thought, holy crap. You're right, Jared. This thing is a train wreck. This thing is disaster. But there was a very vocal minority that was like, oh, Jared, he's just trying something and you're just looking to crap on him, and you're just... No, it was stupid. This idea that he's going to take millionaires, grown adults, and stick them in the locker room and say, okay, you and you be friends. You and you're on the same team. Okay, we're going to play tug of war and rock, paper, scissors. And that is going to keep us from committing penalties during the season, which, by the way, I don't know if you saw the penalty count yesterday. It did not. But I knew that was stupid. I knew that was something ripped right out of a Disney movie. And yet, some people push back. But once we start the actual games, the narrative season goes away. The pretending, oh no, it'll be fine, that's over. And here's the real problem that I think, what this fan base has decided with Callahan, they've realized he can't coach. For the third year in a row, the Titans made a decision to blame one person for a disastrous season instead of just starting over. And instead of bringing in people who do know what they're doing. Yesterday, with the lead at 6-3, at the end of the first half, I sent out a tweet. And I said in the tweet, I said, hey, this app, talking about Twitter, oh my God, Cam, he's the man. I said, this app's not going to like it, but the Titans need to go to the locker room up 6-3. 40 seconds to go in the half. They're at the 7-yard line. Denver had 2 timeouts. Run the ball, clock's over, back to the locker room. In fact, Sean Payton probably would have conceded it because he was getting the ball to start the second half. And of course, Callahan, like a total dipshit, has his rookie quarterback dropping back to pass because we're going to try to be aggressive and we're going to try to go down the field and we're going to try to... I think at the time, Cam Ward had something like 50 passing yards and 30 of it came on the first pass. Stupid. So my dad yesterday, we're watching the game and my dad's like, what the hell is this guy doing? And that's how I felt. But again, it was the first game that kind of highlighted to everybody that Callahan doesn't know what he's doing. And this goes back to the crux of the problem that the Titans have, and this is why the Titans are in the spot they're in. Because again, for the third year in a row, the Titans have made a decision to blame one person for a disastrous season instead of just starting over. Instead of getting, again, we learned yesterday, if you didn't already know this, you learned yesterday, Brian Callahan does not know what he's doing as a head coach. And I have advocated for 3 years, blow it up, start over, and go get somebody who has done this before, who does know what they're doing. I said during the end of the 2023 season, I said, I'd clean house. I'd move on from Vrabel, who lost yesterday, by the way. The great Mike Vrabel fell to the actually great Pete Carroll and the Raiders. And everybody told me at the time when I said, hey, move on from Vrabel, clean house, start over, veteran general manager. And everyone said, Jared, you're a racist. I'm like, wait a minute. What? They said, you can't fire a general manager after one season. But the truth that I kept arguing this, and apparently nobody wanted to listen to me. The truth is they hired Ran Carthon to work with Vrabel, not work for Vrabel or not have Vrabel work for, but they hired him to work with Vrabel. But again, they just blamed Vrabel. By deciding to move on from Vrabel and keep Ran because that's fair, what the Titans did was they gave Ran a de facto promotion. They fucked that up. Then after last year, I said, hey, blow it up at the top. Go get a veteran football person. Go get Rick Spielman, who was the general manager in Minnesota, drafted Justin Jefferson, drafted Christian Darrisaw, got them to an NFC title game with Case Keenum at quarterback. Go get him. Look, he may not be the best general manager in the... I know he knows what he's doing. Go get Thomas Dimitrov, the former general manager of the Falcons. When they had a 25-point lead in the Super Bowl. Go get him. Because again, he may not be the best general manager, but I know running a football program, he knows what he's doing. Nope, they didn't. And I said, if you do that, then let that guy decide what to do with the coach. I never said last year at the end whether Callahan should keep his job or be fired because I felt like it was a bigger picture discussion. Most of those guys come in and say, hey, I want my own coach, so this is what we're going to do. But not here. Not Amy. Every year she blames one person and never takes the big picture look at the organization. Again, the big picture for me last year was I thought that Brian Callahan was a great guy who probably didn't have the bone in his body to be mean enough to be a good head coach. I was also pretty sure that he was full of shit. Last year when they couldn't get a first down against Seattle in practice, and he said, well, it's hot out here. And I thought, oh, holy crap. I think he thought coaching was going to be easier than it actually was. But I also thought maybe he had a chance to grow from year one to year two. Then the offseason happened. First, I was expecting major changes to the Titans coaching staff, not just the special teams coordinator. But I was thinking there were going to be huge changes because that's what coaches who barely keep their job, that's what they do. They change their entire coaching staff in hopes that this guy that we just brought in to be the offensive coordinator is the answer. They change their coaching staff in hopes of, we were 28th in the league last year allowed in points. Let's get a new D coordinator in here. So clearly something wasn't right, but not Callahan. Because I'm sitting there saying, are you sure you want Denard Wilson running the defense after last year? Are you sure you want Nick Holtz doing whatever the hell it is that he does with the offense? I don't know what he does. But are you sure you want him doing whatever it is that he does? Because last year, it wasn't very good. And their answer was yes. We do want Nick Holtz in the same spot. We do want Denard Wilson in the same spot. We do want most of the position coaches in the same spot. And that was such a huge red flag to me for Callahan. And then the Pee Wee program. Again, I remember the day they introduced the Pee Wee program. Tony Pollard met with the media. They asked Tony Pollard what he thought of it. Tony Pollard's like, I don't even know what we get. And I thought, you have got to be kidding me with this Disney Plus bullshit. And last week I said, I think Cam's going to be a bust. Why? Because he's got a bunch of morons surrounding him in a bad organization. And I talked about how Callahan majors in the minors. And he worries about things that don't matter. He worries about the YouTube videos that the team is putting out there and apparently doesn't worry about what the rule book says. I felt like the overall sentiment throughout the course of the offseason was, Jared is a hater. And then one game goes by and everybody is thinking, oh my God, this coach is a moron. I can't believe that you people or more of you people didn't think that when he tried to implement that crappy Pee Wee program. And a lot of you didn't, for what it's worth. So I'm glad yesterday happened. Because when something like that, when a coach shows his pure incompetence in an actual football game, once that moment happens, then there is no taking it back. There is no excusing it. There is no pretending that the opposite is true just because you want the opposite to be true. There's no, maybe the Pee Wee program will install accountability as a team. No. You all know he can't coach. And here's the crux of the issue with Brian Callahan's inability to coach. Coming into the season, We would talk about records or expectations, and people would say things like, well, I just hope Cam develops. I don't care about the season. I don't care about the win-loss record. I don't care about the playoffs. I don't care. I just hope that Cam develops into a great quarterback. And I understand the sentiment. But if Brian Callahan can't coach, and yesterday he gets an F for his coaching performance, and this offseason implementing the Pee Wee program, he gets an F for his coaching performance given the fact that they were penalized 13 times for 131 yards. Boy, that Pee Wee program really worked. And last year, 3-win football team, F. So F, F, F. What's that tell you? It tells you he can't F fucking coach. That's what it tells you. So if you realize that he can't coach, and all you're worried about this year is the development of Cam Ward, you're not worried about winning and losing, then this is bad. Because if you can't coach, you can't develop Cam Ward. And if you can't develop Cam Ward, then it is 99% likely that Cam Ward will fail. Because that's how this league works. Bad teams draft good, talented quarterbacks and fuck them up. So if he can't coach, he can't develop Cam. And if he can't develop Cam, then you just wasted an entire season. And I know it's week 1 in 2025, but for Callahan and his ability to coach, it's really week 18. And the first 17 were a complete and total failure. And so was week number 18. So I have to ask everybody out there, why do we think number 19 is going to be any different? Why do we think week 20 or week 21 is going to be any different? And that is why I have been so down on this franchise this offseason. If he can't coach, which we all saw yesterday, has no feel for the game, doesn't know the rules, how can he possibly develop Cam Ward? And if he can't develop Cam Ward, what is the point of this season? And that's why I'm miserable as a Titan fan. There is no changing this. This was a January problem. Can Brian Callahan coach? Here you are 1 week into a 17, 18-week season, and we all know with a rookie quarterback, they have the wrong coach. And now you know why I am so miserable as a Titan fan. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the most egregious thing Callahan did on Sunday was not knowing the rules. And this includes everything that happened yesterday. The penalties, which are on the coach, the lack of accountability with the team, that awful play calling before the end of the half, which gave Denver 7 points. But the biggest, most egregious fuck up that Brian Callahan had yesterday was not knowing the rules. So I'm sure many of you have heard this, but let's just make sure everybody's on the same page. This was Brian Callahan asked after the game about not challenging the Alec Iomanor third down throw along the sideline. Here's what Callahan said.
Was there a challenge on the Iomanor play where they moved out of bounds on the sideline and it looked like his elbow hit inbounds first?
Yeah, you got to get a foot inbounds too. Which we didn't have a clean look at whether his foot was down as well. An elbow doesn't equal 2 feet, so his foot would have had to come down as well. We didn't have a clean look, so the call from upstairs was that it wasn't worth challenging.
Okay, so right then and there, I heard that during Postgame Live, and I kind of looked up and I was like, wait a minute, what? Because the way I figured it, kind of what I have always thought was anything that's not a foot equals 2 feet. One elbow equals 2 feet. One shin equals 2 feet. One ass cheek, Jonnu Smith in the Baltimore playoff game equals 2 feet. That's kind of what I always believed. But hey, he's the head coach. So when I heard that, I kind of looked like, wait a minute. What? Is that true? And then I saw Kaharski while we were hosting the postgame show last night. I saw Kaharski say that is factually incorrect. So once again, Callahan is definitively saying, hey, one elbow does not equal a catch, even though one elbow does equal a catch. And a head coach not knowing the rules is completely and totally unacceptable. Years ago, there was a game 10 years ago against the Miami Dolphins. That awful Ken Wisenhunt season with Mariota. They played at home against the Dolphins. They got crushed. Ken Wisenhunt got mad. They were just getting their asses kicked. And there was a turnover, and it looked like the ball hit the ground, and Wisenhunt threw the flag. And as we all know now, the booth reviews turnovers and scoring plays. So a coach cannot throw the challenge flag on turnovers and scoring plays. Wisenhunt threw the flag anyways. Wisenhunt got docked a timeout because you can't challenge that. It's automatically reviewed. And everybody was talking about that after the game. And Blaine Bishop, who was hosting Titans Talk Back at the time, Blaine Bishop said, I didn't know the rule either. And Floyd, the next day, he and I were talking, and he was just railing on Wisenhunt for not knowing the rules. And I said, I was listening to Blaine yesterday. And Blaine said that he didn't know the rule either. And Floyd looked at me and he goes, is Blaine paid millions of dollars to know the rules? And I thought to myself, you know what? A head coach in the NFL, there's a lot of gray area. Does this guy call his plays? Is this guy really a good schemer? Is he more of a leader type? Is he more of a rah-rah guy? Motivational speeches? Knowing the rules is binary. And every NFL head coach, as part of the job, has to know the rules. Every head coach, period. Every NFL head coach has to know the rules. What Brian Callahan said yesterday was factually incorrect. So I went to the press conference today, and I did wonder how Callahan was going to handle this. And I said to TD before the press conference, I said, Callahan needs to get up there, and he needs to say, guys, I just want everybody to know I told the team this morning. I fucked up yesterday. I didn't know the rules. I didn't know what I screwed up and put that on me. And he kind of did that today. Here was his explanation in his opening statement before he took any questions.
I know you guys are all here for the conversation about the play with Ellick and challenging the play and what I said after the game. And look, ultimately, my interpretation of the rule was wrong. I'll own it. We should have challenged the play, and that's pretty much all I can say about it. Is I'll own the mistake. We should have challenged it, and that's where it stands. So other than that, you guys can go ahead.
Okay, I should have challenged the play. I screwed up. My interpretation of the rule was wrong. Translation: he didn't know the rule. I'm not trying to be rude here. I'm trying to be honest. The translation to this is he didn't know the rule. That is, again, binary. Unacceptable for an NFL head coach. But then not only did he kind of apologize and try to be accountable and say, hey, I screwed up. My interpretation was wrong. I'm sorry. I messed up, and I tell the players to own it, and I've got to own it. He then kind of took that apology back. This was Callahan, 3 minutes later in the same press conference.
On the Iron Manor play, that rule has been in effect for a long time. I guess in retrospect, are you surprised yourself that you didn't know the correct interpretation of that rule?
Yeah, I think I got a little more clarity on it now at this point. At the end of the day, those things happen really fast, and you're starting to get ready for the next play call, and you're waiting on information from what the look looks like. And look, I misspoke on it after the game, and I'll own that. I'm aware of the rules. I understand the rules. Again, a mistake that I made that I gotta correct, just like I'd ask our players to.
So you say that you misspoke yesterday, but at that time you knew that one elbow equaled 2 feet.
Say that one more time.
So yesterday when you misspoke on the rule, you did know at that point that one elbow equals 2 feet.
At that moment?
Yes.
Yeah, I think at the end of the game I was worried about a lot of the things that went wrong in the game, and the heat of the moment, the frustration of it after the game in the press conference, I think is, again, I misspoke. I'm well aware of the rule. I understand how it works. and the way that I articulated afterwards was incorrect. And I understand the rules of this game pretty well.
Okay. So originally it was my interpretation of the rule. I was wrong. I need to be accountable. Then it turns to, I know the rules of this game pretty well. The math is not mathing there. He's full of it. And again, I want to play that second clip again because I think John Glennon asked a very good question. He and I, when he asked this question, we were trying to get in together on this, and we actually had the same question. Again, this was Glennon's question, and Callahan said, hey, my interpretation was off, which, again, I appreciate the honesty saying I didn't know the rule, but as an NFL head coach, knowing the rules is not optional. It's part of the job. Again, that's the thing Floyd said to me about Wisenhunt 10 years ago. Does Blaine Bishop make multiple millions of dollars to know the rules? No, he doesn't. Ken Wisenhunt did. Brian Callahan makes multiple millions of dollars a year to know the rules. That is his job. He failed yesterday. So again, the apology, the accountability, that's good. But then he kind of walked it back with, again, I know the rules. Do you? Let's play the cut again.
On the Iron Manor play, I mean, that rule has been in effect for a long time. I guess in retrospect, are you surprised yourself that you didn't know the correct interpretation of that rule?
Yeah, I think I got a little more clarity on it now at this point. At the end of the day, those things happen really fast. And you're starting to get ready for the next play call, and you're waiting on information from what the look looks like. And look, I misspoke on it after the game, and I'll own that. I'm aware of the rules. I understand the rules. I'm aware of the rules. Again, a mistake that I made that I gotta correct, just like I'd ask our players to.
So you say that you misspoke yesterday, but at that time you knew that one elbow equaled 2 feet.
Say that one more time.
So yes. By the way, I love that when he says that, when he's like, say that again. And he continues on because he knew what I said, just like you knew what I said. So I'm now sitting here saying, so when you said yesterday that one elbow doesn't equal 2 feet, did you know that one elbow equals 2 feet? Again, you just...
On the Iron Manor play, I mean, that rule has been in effect for a long time. I guess in retrospect, are you surprised yourself that you didn't know the correct interpretation of that rule?
Yeah, I think I got a little more clarity on it now at this point. At the end of the day, those things happen really fast, and you're starting to get ready for the next play call, and you're waiting on information from what the look looks like. And look, I misspoke on it after the game, and I'll own that. I'm aware of the rules. I understand the rules. Just again, a mistake that I made that I gotta correct, just like I'd ask our players to.
So you say that you misspoke yesterday, but at that time you knew that one elbow equaled 2 feet.
Say that one more time.
So yesterday when you misspoke on the rule, you did know at that point that one elbow equals 2 feet.
At that moment?
Yes.
Yeah, I think at the end of the game, I was worried about a lot of the things that went wrong in the game, and the heat of the moment, the frustration of it after the game in the press conference, I think is, again, I misspoke. I'm well aware of the rule. I understand how it works. And the way that I articulated afterwards was incorrect. And, I understand the rules of this game pretty well.
I understand the rules of this game pretty well. Really? Because it doesn't seem that way. But again, that whole thing, did you see those stall tactics where I asked, so when you say you misspoke, did you know that one elbow equals 2 feet? And he said, well, at that point in time at the press conference, I'm worried about the heat of the game and blah, 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 blah. Bullshit. I mean, come on now. And then he was like, can you say that again? Like wanting to hear it again and he's trying to buy time to think of what to say because he doesn't know the right answer. And I'm going to tell you what the right answer should have been. And this goes back to Brian Callahan's inability to coach. Because I always talk about this all the time. Now, a lot of people would say when it came to Callahan last year, well, I think he's a good play caller, but I don't think he's a good head coach. And I would say I don't give a rat's ass if you're a good play caller, if you can't be a head coach when you're the head coach. But I'm also not convinced that Callahan is a good play caller. And I never was convinced that Callahan was a good play caller. I think that's just some people wanting to give Callahan the benefit of the doubt because you want to believe that your coach isn't a complete and total moron. But I go back to what Callahan said about, hey, I know the rules. Well, if you knew the rule, then yesterday when you got up there and you said what you said, you screwed up because you gave everybody the impression you didn't know the rule. And that's where head coaching comes in. Forget about scheming. Forget about coordinating. Forget about play calling. This is where the head coach runs the football team. Let's say, and I saw a tweet from Kaharski, and I want to read this tweet out. And if I had had the time without the press conference, I would have put the tweet up there for you guys to see on the stream. But Kaharski had a tweet that said, while the buck stops with Brian Callahan, Director of Game Management and Strategic Initiatives, Rob Reederer, also failed on the non-challenge. He's in Callahan's ear and also has to know the rule and should have been telling the coach the right thing to do. So they did hire a rules coach that is in Callahan's ear, that tells him when to challenge, that tells him when to go for it on fourth down, that tells him what the rules are. And Paul is insinuating that the rules coordinator got it wrong. So let's say Callahan thought what I thought, which again is unacceptable because I'm not paid multiple millions of dollars to know the rules. But let's say Callahan thought what I thought, which is, wait a minute. I thought that one elbow was 2 feet, but it's not. Let's say somebody up in the booth said, no, he's got to have a foot down. That's the rule. Well, at that point in time, number one, Callahan has to know the rules, and Callahan has to, instead of me yesterday hearing Callahan in the press conference and think, wait a minute, that's not right, is it? Instead of that, Callahan has to know the rules because he is the coach, and he needs to say, that's not true. And then he needs to fire his rules coordinator because if the rules coordinator doesn't know the rules, he needs to be fired. That's first thing. The second thing is this. Once you make that kind of mistake, there are some mistakes out there, and look, we all screw up on basic stuff that we should be able to do. I'm no different, I'm sure. I've screwed up in the past hosting radio. I think I'm pretty good. I know the rules. But I'm sure I've screwed something up. But at that point, it becomes damage control. And I used the Anthony Richardson tap out as the example to this last year. When Anthony Richardson decided to tap out of the game, and then Richardson went to the podium after the game, and he said he was tired, and then everybody around the country clowned him. And I said, that's a bad example of head coaching. Because right there, Shane Steichen should have said to Richardson, hey, if anybody asks, you tweaked your ankle. Do you understand? Right then and there on the sideline during the game. That's head coaching. Because if Richardson had gone to the podium after the game and Richardson had said, I twisted my ankle and, I just wanted to make sure. I mean, if I was the coach, I would have said, now go into the blue tent and come back out 5 seconds later. Nobody would have asked. It would have all been forgotten. Instead, it'll be remembered forever. As far as Anthony Richardson is concerned. That's bad head coaching. If Brian Callahan got the rule wrong, Callahan should have said this yesterday when asked about the Io Manor challenge. And this is Callahan needing to be prepared or needing to know the rules or needing to know how to be a head coach, all of which he seems to not be able to do. Callahan should have said, because this is what I thought in live time. I saw the play and I thought, I think that elbow might have landed in there. But I also was 50-50 on challenging it because you need your timeouts. Got a rookie quarterback on the road, 1-score game. You're going to need your timeouts. And I wasn't sure that 100% of Io Manor's elbow landed in the field of play. I'm thinking 4/5 of the elbow definitely landed in the field of play. But did that fifth of the elbow, did that land in the field of play? And if the answer is no, then you would have lost the challenge. You would have lost your timeout. Now, it still probably was worth the risk. But once you make the decision not to challenge, you made the decision. When Callahan was asked about that, in fact, I'm going to play the cut where you'll hear the question. Here's what his answer should have been.
Challenge on the Io Manor play where they ruled it out of bounds on the sidelines, and it looked like his elbow hit inbounds first on replay.
Yeah, you got to get a foot inbounds.
Okay. Instead of Callahan saying the stupidest thing he could have possibly said right there, what he should have said is, yeah, Terry, I mean, that was a tough one for us. Like, we were talking about it, but we weren't sure that the elbow got down inbounds completely. We're looking at the game, thinking about the second half, wanting to say, okay, should we use it? Do we want to risk the timeout? And we did not get a definitive view because I didn't see a definitive view from Fox. We did not have a definitive view that that elbow hit the ground, and we wanted to guard that timeout. Now, the debate becomes, should he have challenged? Shouldn't he have challenged? But that's a debate that you have about a coach after a game every single time. Every time there's a game you lose, there's a play you could have challenged. There are always conversations about should he have challenged, should he not have challenged? Should he have played Johnson? Shouldn't he have played Johnson? Should he have gone for it on fourth down? Shouldn't he have gone for it on fourth down? That's not a referendum on the coach's competence. Not knowing the rule, that is a referendum on whether or not this coach knows how to do this job. And it is usually a sign that he does not. And that goes back to the head coaching element of this. Callahan doesn't need more PR help. They changed PR people. They brought in his guy that he knew from the Raiders to be the head of PR. And here he is after week one getting slaughtered in the press and by his own fan base. Why? Because you don't need more PR help. You need to know how to be a head coach. Optics matter when you're a head coach. The way you say things matter when you're a head coach. Again, all Brian Callahan had to do yesterday was say, we weren't certain that Elliott got his elbow in, and we didn't want to lose the timeout. Now, you can discuss whether or not that would have been a good decision or not, but I don't think you can discuss and say that's a better decision than that's a worse decision than what he did say, which was essentially, I don't know the rules. And if you don't know the rules in the NFL, you can't be a head coach. Again, that is binary. Hey, I'd like to be head coach in the NFL. Well, are you a good leader? Are you a good schemer? Are you a quarterback developer? Are you a coordinator who might be the next Sean McVay? Are you an experienced coach who maybe got a raw deal from a terrible organization like Todd Bowles with the Jets? Those are all subjective. Do you know the rules? Question mark. That is a qualification. And to me, that should be a non-negotiable qualification for a head coach. So to me, the most egregious thing he did on Sunday, and I think, again, the penalties, you can't have an entire offseason where you make up some bullcrap program and you say this bullcrap program ripped straight from a Disney movie is going to be our saving grace. You can't do that and then have 13 penalties for 131 yards. That's on the coach. Again, his decision to try to be aggressive at the end of the first half from his own 7-yard line, that's pretty stupid too. But none of it is as egregious as not knowing the rules. And if it was Callahan's rules coordinator, as Paul alludes to, not being able to help Callahan out, then Callahan's got to fire him. And Callahan's got to get a new rules coordinator. And Callahan's got to be public about it too. He's got to go to the podium and say, hey, yesterday I misspoke. I was wrong. I thought I was right, but Rob said into my ear that he has to get a foot in bounds. I didn't think that was the rule, and I should have known the rule, but we're making a change at that position. But this is Brian Callahan we're talking about. And what's his biggest problem? Of many. Accountability. He can't hold other people accountable. Can't hold Simmons accountable. Can't hold any of the players accountable. Can't hold his assistant coaches accountable. Last year, couldn't hold his special teams accountable. And now he's got a rules coordinator. I don't know if the rules coordinator screwed up or not, but he's got a replay assistant and rules coordinator. Again, let me give you that title again, as was indicated in Paul's tweet, which I'm not going to say was a passive-aggressive way of Paul, but it's like Paul making sure you know how serious this title is. Director of Game Management and Strategic Initiatives. A director of game management that doesn't know the rules. Unacceptable. Again, why did they not change that after last year? Now, I do want to talk about some of the good that happened in yesterday's game. If I may, talk about some of the good. So, number one, let's start with Cam Ward. I thought Cam Ward looked cool and composed for the most part. Now, in that 7-minute period where the Titans decided to go tempo, down by 1 score, which I don't know why you would go tempo, with a rookie quarterback making his first start on the road against Denver. I don't know why you would go tempo, but hey, that's a Callahan issue, not a Ward issue, and Callahan was very much in the bad for what happened yesterday. Outside of that, I thought Ward was poised. That first third down of the game, Ward scrambles away from a sack, dumps it off to Tony Pollard, who runs for 39 yards. Ward did show at times some of that backyard football that is his superpower. That is what he has that you can't coach, is that backyard football. Kind of Mahomes has it as well as anybody in the league. That, hey, I'm going to make a play. Now, sometimes that'll get you in trouble, and I worry for Ward's sake that there will be more screw-ups than there will be big plays, but he didn't have a lot of screw-ups. So I liked what I saw yesterday out of Cam. Again, the footwork drives me crazy. When his feet are pointed sideways, duck-footed when he throws the ball. But he had some really good throws. And I'm not going to make any proclamations like a lot of people were yesterday, being like, oh, God, Cam, he's the man. Can you believe it? He's the man. I'm not going to do that after we lived through Mariota's debut, in which I did make a proclamation that he was the next Brady or Aaron Rodgers. I'm not going to make a proclamation after we lived through Will Levis's debut. And I'm not going to make any proclamations after Cam didn't throw for a touchdown and didn't throw for over 150 yards. But he kept his composure. And that was with everybody around him for the most part. Calvin Ridley dropping the ball, Chig dropping the ball. Everybody around him playing and coaching like complete shit. So that was the first good thing. The second good thing, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, the second good thing actually belongs to Jeffery Simmons. Now, Jeffery Simmons had a great game as far as the playing was concerned. Before Postgame Live at halftime, when it looked like that game could go either way as long as Callahan kept his nose out of it, it looked like that game could have gone either way. I was thinking, hey, if they win, I'm going to make a big deal about how Simmons, who I have been challenging for each and every little thing, I'm going to make a big deal about how he showed up. Because I've been saying with Simmons, he keeps talking the talk, but he's not walking the walk. Well, yesterday, for about 3/4 of the game, he walked the walk. Then he let his anger get the best of him. And you could argue that it cost the team dramatically. Now, I would love to get with one of these nerds that does the win probability to see what percentage the team had to win. But I'd love to see what the win probability was when Cody Barton was wrapping up to make that tackle. And if he had gone down and it had been 4th down and the Broncos had punted, what their win probability chance would have been compared to what it was after Simmons got the penalty. And so then I could quantify how much Simmons hurt the team yesterday. But at the same time, I'm going to give Simmons credit because unlike his head coach, after the game was over, Simmons owned up for his mistakes. This was Jeffery Simmons after the game.
It's the penalties, man. Myself, dumb shit that hurt the team. And the penalties I had could have been avoided. Cody had them wrapped up. It's just dumb shit. There's no excuses for that. I take full accountability to that. And even with all the freaking penalties we had, we still was in this game. And we had a chance. But, when you have, over 150, I think it was like 150 in penalties? 130. 130, that's terrible. And, you'll never win a game like that, especially on the road. That's a good football team. But at the end of the day, man, we have to clean that up. Like I said, that's the most disappointing thing, especially coming out of this game, was the penalties.
Okay. Jeffery Simmons said, hey, can't do dumb shit to hurt the team. And I did. Cody Barton had him wrapped up, and I shouldn't have gone in there. And we can't win committing those kind of penalties. Again, his head coach won't really take ownership for his mistakes, but Simmons did yesterday. And that is a step in the right direction for Simmons. Usually, Simmons finds somebody to blame. And if you had asked me before I saw that cut, if you had asked me, hey, what is Simmons going to say about his 15-yard penalty, which absolutely hurt the football team yesterday, I would have assumed that what Jeffery Simmons would have said is, I didn't hear the whistle, and it was a late play, and it was the ref screwed me, and blah, blah, blah. But he didn't do that. He took total ownership for it. And so I thought his play was good. He's got to not do the dumb shit that hurts the team like that. He's got to put off to the side and not do it. But his play was good. And he was accountable after the game. And I give credit where credit is due, and I give credit to Simmons there. So that's the second good thing I liked. The third good thing I liked, I know the Titans gave up 6 sacks, but I actually liked the play of the offensive line. I'm worried about Latham's hip, and I'm worried about Latham, because I felt like Latham was the weak link in the offensive line yesterday when the 5 starters were out there. I also hated Zeitler's penalty. That's a veteran. He can't get those penalties. Zeitler and Pollard and those guys, they can't hurt you. And they did yesterday. Ridley. But I actually think the offensive line played well. Now, at the end of the game, where everybody knew they had to pass, when it was sack, I think some of that was on Cam for holding the ball too long. I think some of that was just dictated by the game. You're putting yourself in position to where you have to pass, and you're sending 4 or 5 guys out in the pattern because you're trying to pick up yards, and now you've got an all-pro pass rusher and an all-pro defensive lineman in Zach Allen going up mano-a-mano with your, I think, league average left tackle in Dan Moore. So I'm not going to be too hard on you for that. I think the offensive line is going to play much better next week. I think they're going to play much better as the season continues. I think they're going to play much better in home games. Now, I worry about Braden Fisk and Jared Verse next week, because as good as Nick Bonito is and Zach Allen, they're not as good as Jared Verse and Braden Fisk, but the game will be at home. And if they can avoid any major injury, and who knows about J.C. Latham, but I actually think that the offensive line played well for the most part. Again, I don't want to go through sack by sack, because what's the point of that? But I did feel like, as far as the sack by sack stuff was concerned, I did feel like some of that was just, it's 3rd down. They know you're going to pass it. Here they come after you, and Cam gets sacked at the goal line because the coach should have run the ball. He didn't. Not blaming the line for that. So I actually was encouraged by the Titans offensive line. The fourth good thing that I liked, boy, there were actually a lot of things I liked, even though the Titans absolutely crapped the game away. The fourth thing I liked the special teams. Special teams did 2 good things. When's the last time special teams did 2 good things in a game? And not only did 2 good things, but did 2 good things without really doing any bad things. They got the good return from Chimere DK, and they got the recovered muff punt. I guess you could say they did some bad. James Williams got a 15-yard penalty, but I don't think that's a special teams issue. I think that's a James Williams issue. So Bones Fossil taking over the special teams, and maybe it'll end up being a train wreck, but I salute Bones Fossil because it looked a whole hell of a lot better than it had looked under Craig Aukerman, who sucked, and Colt Anderson, who sucked. And then finally, the last good thing, I thought the Titans defense gave them a chance. I truly believed, and I still think the Titans defense stinks, and I don't have any faith in Denard Wilson, but I really thought Denver was going to annihilate the Titans. And the Titans turned Denver's defense over. They got off the field, and for the most part, they did the best they could. Yes, there were some missed tackles. Amani Hooker missed one that was a big tackle. They did allow J.K. Dobbins at the end of the game to break off the touchdown run after the big run. I forget who had the big run for Denver, but they had the big run towards the end that set up the touchdown. I know. But I actually thought the defense held their own. I said before the game, I said on Friday's show, because I didn't think the Titans had a prayer in terms of winning that game. I said they can only give up 20 points. That's it. The defense can only give up 20. Now, I didn't think they were actually going to give up 20. I thought they were going to give up 35. But I said, if you want a chance to win, you got to hope for 20. Well, Callahan gave them 7 points before the end of the half. So the defense gave up 13 points. I don't care if you've got a rookie quarterback. I don't care if you're playing on the road. I don't care if it's Denver with that hostile atmosphere or anything else. You should be able to manufacture 13 points, especially if your defense and special teams give you 3 on a kickoff return and turn the football over 4 times. You should be able to score 13 points. The Titans defense did their job. So I'm a firm believer in being fair, and I'm a firm believer in giving credit where credit is due. And so I thought Denver was going to annihilate that defense, and the Titans defense absolutely turned them over. So we have a bunch of comments to get to here on the program from the YouTube chat. And so I'm just going to randomly pick them. Because as much as I can kind of follow your YouTube chat while I'm talking, I kind of have a hard time focusing on doing the two things. So let's get to this one. Gov says, we're going to ruin Cam. He came out and looked so poised under pressure on that first drive. I just know he'll be mentally shaken by the bye week. Now, I don't know when the bye week is off the top of my head. I think it's week 10? Because there's a lot of people now that are wondering when Callahan's going to get fired. And again, I don't know the answer to that either. But I do think if the Titans don't make adjustments, and I'm talking about game type adjustments, if they don't do that, then they are going to ruin Cam. And here's what I mean by a game type adjustment. When it comes to, okay, here's what we know about the Titans. The Titans' offensive line is not as bad as it was last year. Last year, they couldn't block 4 with 5. They can block 4 with 5. But when you get in a situation where you're backed up against your own goal line and you don't have to have it, you don't need Cam to drop back and just hold the ball and get sacked. If you're going to send 5 out into the pattern, there better be something quick. Boom, get the ball out. I heard Callahan talking about how, I didn't do a good enough job to get the play calls in fast enough. That's got to change. But I just feel like a lot of these things aren't going to change, which really bothers me. One person says they had 2 more offensive yards than they had penalty yards. I'm still in shock about that. Yeah, I mean, when they put that up there on Fox, I thought, oh my God, that's a terrible stat. And not only that, like they were bad penalties. Jarvis Brownlee's putting his hands all over the guy. I love that. Jarvis Brownlee just putting his hands all over the guy. And after Jarvis Brownlee put his hands all over the guy, he's after the game saying, oh, no. That's not, no, dude, you're going to get called for it. You've got a reputation. It's a well-earned reputation. Your hands are all over this guy. They're going to call it. CW says, Callahan reminds me of Adam Gase with the Jets. I said last season when he destroyed the promising young quarterback in Will Levis. One thing that I think bothers me is I think we sometimes get a little too caught up in it just being one person's fault. And that's with a lot of things in life. And I think that's because we all have anger, including me, and we want to pin our anger on one person. So remember when everything was John Robinson's fault? Like, oh, it's John Robinson's fault that They didn't draft well, and it's John Robinson's fault that they traded A.J. Brown, and it's John Robinson's fault that... So, was it John Robinson's fault that Todd Downing was the offensive coordinator? Because that was Mike Vrabel's coach, and Vrabel could have fired him after the 21 year, but he didn't. He kept him. And Downing stunk. But nobody was mad at Vrabel at that point. They were just all mad at Robinson. And when the team was bad the next year, everybody was mad at Vrabel. Well, he just promoted Tim Kelly, and he acts like an a-hole at the press conferences, and he hired Jason Hodeling to be the line coach, and he and Rand Carthon went out and got Andre Dillard to play left tackle. They didn't get a right tackle. Is that all Vrabel's fault? Was Rand not there to say, oh, whoa, we need a real left tackle? But again, we only blame one person. Last year, the blame was on Levis, not on Callahan. It's not Callahan's fault Levis craps his pants. And today I was listening to Robbie and Joe, and there were people that were like, maybe it wasn't Levis's fault. No, maybe it was Levis's fault and it was Callahan's fault. Maybe there's something, maybe it wasn't just one guy's fault. But again, because of our anger, we have to pin it somewhere. And so when we try to pin it, we only come up with one person that's the problem. Like I'm telling you right now, if I'm the Titans, at the end of the year, let's say that the season goes the same way it went last year, I'm firing everybody and starting over with somebody that knows what they're doing, which was my suggestion last year. And it was my suggestion the year before that. And it's going to keep being my suggestion because, again, who over there knows what they're doing? What has Chad Brinker done that makes you confident that he knows what he's doing? What has Mike Borgonzi done that makes you confident that he knows what he's doing? Don't just put all your anger on Callahan, though he is the biggest culprit today. One person says, call me old school, but I like a head coach who knows the rules. I don't like doing this when it comes to, I don't like doing this when it comes to talking about what Floyd would have said, because there were many times where I was surprised by Floyd's opinions. And I always felt like, he got mad at me when I was younger or when he was alive. He got mad at me when I would, quote unquote, put words in his mouth if I did that. And so I always try to avoid saying, Floyd would have said, or Floyd would have this, or Floyd would have that. But I was texting Ian today, and I said to Ian, I go, I think that the Callahan comments about not knowing the rules, not the ones today where he said, I didn't know the rules, and then said, I knew the rules, but I misspoke. And trust me, I know the rules, which was a total contradiction. But yesterday, the one elbow doesn't equal 2 feet, the factually incorrect, I think that would have been the final straw. As much as Floyd didn't criticize the Titans, I think he would have gone off on Callahan today for not knowing the rules. And I agree. I absolutely agree that, to me, it is not an option for the head coach to not know the rules. And I don't even think it's an option for the head coach to give the appearance that he doesn't know the rules. How can you hold anybody accountable if you, the head coach, don't even know the fucking rules? Josh says they should have fired Callahan after last season. Now it's maybe too late unless they pull off a miraculous hire like the Rams did with Sean McVay. Cam is screwed. It's either that they have to pull off a miraculous hire, or Cam has to be, inside, has to have that oomph to him that Joe Burrow has in Cincinnati. That, hey, everybody else might be stupid, but I'll figure it out. Like, that's what he's going to need to have. And I don't know if he does or doesn't. 99% of quarterbacks out there don't have it. 99% of the time. Chaz says, Why does every head coach have someone upstairs advising their calls? So I think it's important to have somebody upstairs when it comes to replay challenges, because you're on the sideline, you're managing the game, and they've got a giant flat screen monitor in front of them, and they're watching it in live time. Oh, no, coach, challenge this. He was short of the marker. I do think that that's important. Do you need a guy to tell you what the rules are? You know, I go back to the analytics of all of this. This is what analytics has done in sports. This is why I use Pro Football Focus. I use Pro Football Focus because it is convenient. That's why. Because when we're talking about the left guard from the LA Rams that the Titans may be interested in signing, my two options are to go watch LA Rams film and sit down with you and say, hey, he blocked this guy. Or I could just go to Pro Football Focus and say, here's what the PFF numbers say. That's why it exists. That's why I use it. You can say that's lazy, and you wouldn't totally be wrong. Analytics have kind of done that at times in the NFL, where we have an analytics guy upstairs who tells us when to go for it or when not to go for it, or there is a big bone of contention between Mike Vrabel and the analytics department at the end of his last year. If you remember, they went on the road, that comeback they had against Miami. Vrabel went for 2 after they scored the first touchdown. They're down 14. They score a touchdown. They're down 8. They go for 2. They get it. They score again. They kick a field goal. Vrabel's theory is, if I go for 2 and don't get it, then I can score and go for 2 again and tie the game. The analytics department, for whatever reason, didn't like that. I don't know the numbers. I don't know where they come up with that, but they didn't like it. And what happens is, for me, is I think these guys want to quantify everything with data to say good decision, bad decision, and they don't want to trust the gut of the head coach. But I'm saying, when it comes to trusting the gut of the head coach, isn't that why we pay the head coach? Like, isn't that what makes him our head coach? Is, hey, this guy understands the players. He understands the game. He should know the rules. Isn't that what we want in a head coach? But again, they all want these guys upstairs to tell them what to do, for whatever that's worth. Cap says Callahan's problem isn't accountability, it's play calling. I think it might be both. I think he may not be able to hold anybody accountable, and at the same time, I think he may not be able to call plays. That's what I truly feel like. So I want to get to this to wrap up today's program. Did anybody see what Vanderbilt did to Virginia Tech on Saturday? And boy, I have a Titans thought off of that absolute ass kicking that Vanderbilt gave to Virginia Tech in the second half. Because I did watch the Vandy Virginia Tech game on Saturday night. I guess I just didn't have a lot of interest in Oklahoma versus Michigan. Now, maybe it's because I think both teams, Oklahoma and Michigan, kind of stink. Or maybe because, as Caroline Fenton says, I hate college football. Now, I'm just going to say, I think anybody who watches a Vanderbilt Virginia Tech game on the ACC network on a Saturday night, I think they would count as a college football fan. It's like how I like Star Trek, but I don't go to the conventions and I don't speak Klingon in my spare time. But the reason I bring this Vanderbilt Virginia Tech game up is because in the second half of the game, Vanderbilt absolutely took Virginia Tech to the woodshed. Belts came off and they spanked that ass. And good for them. And good for Clark Lea. Vanderbilt is 2-0. They're playing South Carolina. If they win on Saturday against South Carolina, they have a real shot with Georgia State and Utah State of coming up. If they can avoid the rat poison, they have a real shot of being 5-0 before they play Alabama, which would be something. I said to Jim Wyatt today, it was the best half of Vanderbilt football I've ever seen. And of course, Kaharski chimes in, and I know Kaharski and I are going to have a little arguing show that will be here on 440 Sports. I think we're going to call it Stillman versus Kaharski, or Stillman and PK, or something like that. But Kaharski said something when I said to Jim, I go, that's the best half of football I have ever seen Vanderbilt play. And Kaharski said something like, they beat Alabama last year. Vanderbilt had 5 drives on offense. They scored 5 touchdowns. They allowed Virginia Tech something like 21 yards of total offense in the second half. 4 first downs. And this wasn't Eastern Lafayette State Tech. This was a real team in a real conference. Like the ACC is a real conference. Virginia Tech is a real school. So in the last 2 years, I've seen the best win in Vanderbilt history against Alabama and the best half of Vanderbilt football against Virginia Tech. And do you want to know why? In the last 2 years, I think we've seen this. Because Clark Lea, the Vanderbilt football coach, did what his buddy Brian Callahan won't do. Clark Lea put his ego and arrogance to the side after a disastrous 2023 season. And it completely changed that program. Instead of saying, no, I know how to coach. I know my guys. I know my coaches. Clark Lea scrapped the whole thing. He went out to New Mexico State and he brought in Jerry Kill and he brought in Tim Beck and he brought in Diego Pavia. And he basically said, hey, I'm taking over the defense. I liked my coaches. I thought we were going to be good in 2023, but we weren't. And he looked in the mirror and he made the changes that I'm sure deep down inside he probably didn't want to make. But he put his ego to the side. Clark is a smart guy. I played in a celebrity softball game when he got the Vanderbilt job, and he was the ceremonial head coach. And he and I sat there and talked for a while during the game. And I got to know Clark, and I'm like, this is a smart guy. And then when Vanderbilt had success in 2022, I'm like, yes, I knew that. I knew he was a smart guy. I didn't know if he was going to have success at Vanderbilt because there are a lot of people who can be very smart and not win at Vanderbilt. But he's a smart guy, and I think he's a good coach. And so when they were 2-10 in 2023, I was absolutely, totally shocked. But I knew he was a smart guy. I knew he was self-aware. So when it comes to that, I'm like, okay, he's a smart guy. He adjusted to the bad season that they had. That's because he's smart. That's because he's a good coach. I've had many talks, with Callahan, and I think he's a great guy. But I never walked away from any interaction with Callahan the way I did with Clark that first time and thought, man, Callahan is a smart guy, smart coach. And the thing about football is, no matter what narratives you want to perpetuate over the course of the offseason, the proof is always in the pudding. And in this case, there's two coaches, both friends. Clark Lea and Brian Callahan got their starts together at UCLA as graduate assistants. One guy had the balls to change and save his career. A year later, he beat Alabama. Right now, he's 2-0. They scored 5 touchdowns in the second half on 5 possessions on the road, again, against a real school. The other guy wouldn't make the changes and doesn't even know the rules. You all see the difference? One guy could put his ego to the side, looked in the mirror, and knew what had to change. The other guy thought, I can do it. And that's why one guy is 2-0 and the toast of his fan base, and the other guy is 0-1 and is about to be run out of town. That's going to do it for us today here on a Titans Monday. Boy, it's nice to have Titans Monday back. I want to thank you all for your comments. Boy, we are crushing it with the subscriptions. We're up over 600. I want to be, by the end of the week, over 1,000. So tell everybody you know, subscribe at Stillman and Co. A&D, at Stillman and Co. on YouTube. Again, across all your digital platforms, 440 Sports, subscribe to that too. Like the podcast, get into it. Stillman versus Kaharski is going to come up here at some point. I don't know when that's going to be. Hit the likes, as I saw somebody put in there. Hit the like as well and boost the program. We'll be back tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Stillman and Company. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell your friends. 440 Sports. Back tomorrow at 2. Everybody, take care.